Good morning. I would like to welcome everybody to the Public Planning Committee's meeting of April 28th. Krista, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Brown?
Here.
Mrs. Becker?
Here.
Mr. Stanford?
Here.
Mr. Ames?
Here, and
All
also,
present.
are we in compliance with FOIA?
Yes, sir, we are.
Thank you. Are there any suggested changes to the agenda? Hearing none, we'll accept it as submitted. Approval of minutes.
Move adoption as written.
All right, and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Appearance by citizens. Krista, do we have anybody slated to speak? General citizen comments today?
No, sir, we had nobody sign up for appearance by citizens, nor were any comments submitted through the portal.
All right, thank you very much. New business, discussion of Palmetto Breeze trolley service enhancements that deliver an innovative and memorable rider experience. Welcome, Mary Lou. It's good to see you again.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Well, with that introduction, I would like to say I think that we have done a great job in enhancing the experience each year as we come out again. And one of the things that I gave everybody to look at is our new brochure. And what we decided early on is we didn't want any advertising on the trolley. We didn't want it a moving billboard around Hilton Head. And so the businesses really wanted to be able to advertise. And so this is our first version where we've really gotten a lot of ads in there. The ads are tied to the maps. The maps tell you what trolley stop you can go to what business. And we sold out all the ads very quickly. It paid for 40,000 of those brochures. So it was really a win situation. And each year we try to enhance what we do as far as that. And the other thing I would really like to point out, because I find it very impressive, the social media that we do on the trolley. I have a marketing person that's very, very good at social media and boosting and all the things he does, which I know nothing about. And we have a huge following on Twitter and Facebook. And I don't know if he went to TikTok, but he answers every inquiry into Facebook about the trolley, off season, on season. It really surprises us. Sunday night, he's responding to people. So I think that does give a very great experience to the person that's trying to figure out whether they want to use the trolley or when it runs or what they can do. He gets right in and has that relationship with people. The other thing I do want to talk about is where we are in ridership. This was as of the 21st. We were at 4,774 people from the 9th to the 21st, which is more than all of April of last year. So we're seeing, it's very preliminary, the numbers, but we're seeing quite an increase already this early on. And so we'll keep you up to date with that. And then some of the things that I did do some investigation about had to do with, I was asked to look at some innovative and different things. And one thing we have had on the radar and been looking at is the electric trolley. And I gave you the brochure of the trolley. They have not built this yet. This is the manufacturer that built our trolley who's now offering this. So this is very new, and I think the costs will go down as time goes on, but just want you to be aware that this option is available to order and purchase an electric trolley. They're $850,000 for one, including the charger. It's quite a lot. Hopefully, as electric vehicles get into the mix, that price will go down. But that is a opportunity we could explore as far as grant funding. I don't know what that would get us, but there is grants for electric vehicles, so we could look into that. I thought that table would be up here that you put stuff up.
Oh,
No.
I didn't realize you needed it.
Well, yeah, I just wanted to show like some of these handouts I brought. I apologize, I didn't have it
Mary Lou,
ready.
while you're doing that, what does a normal gas or diesel trolley cost?
I think the trolleys we got were $374,000. And that doesn't include all of the things we put into the trolley, but there's other additional items that go in, tablets and things, but yeah.
Just following up on that, while you're getting set up, is there an annual cost associated with gas, et cetera, that?
Just the electric to run it. Once we purchase it, then it would be ours to own.
The current ones,
Oh, the current ones? What's the question?
what the gas bill annually looks like?
They probably get around 6 miles to the gallon. I mean, I could figure the mileage and do it that way, but I didn't come prepared for that.
That'd be
but-
interesting.
Yeah,
Figure
yeah.
it out.
And with the cost of fuel going up, it becomes even more enticing that, because what happens with us in our budget, we may budget a certain amount for fuel, and you see what has happened this year. It's gone up to $3 for diesel. It really throws our budget out of whack, whereas with something like this might be a little more predictable. Although I do think that it's going to put the supply and demand, it's going to put a demand for electric on the grid. And so I don't know if that's going to raise everybody's electric price or, how that even works. I'm very new at this. I was given this flyer for the Eco Shuttle. That's something that is made. And I also have, really quickly, I'll show this one as well. This is a little golf car shuttle they do in Lakeland, Florida. And it's called Citrus Connection. It's a 3-year, Citrus Connection is the bus system. It's a 3-year pilot project. They started out doing it lunchtime and on Friday and Saturday nights. And then now they just do it Friday and Saturday nights. And people have to pay a fare, but they run around the downtown district. And so that's interesting. So I right away called and talked to them, and they did that with all non-FTA money. And when I've said before that we can't really do that, well, we can do anything, really, if it's transportation, but our grant money will not fund it. The FTA requires our vehicles to go through certification, and they crash test them in Pennsylvania to make sure that they're safe in a rollover, safe in a side hit, safe in all the different ways that they could get in an accident. And so the only way I can buy vehicles with my grant money, they have to have come through Altoona testing. That's not to say we couldn't do something like this if the town wanted to do that. And I wrote the prices by each one of those vehicles up there on the Eco Shuttle. I know you've asked before, could we do something like this? And the answer is yes, we can do it. We can't use our grant funding for it, but we could do it.
Amy, do you have any questions or comments?
I'm going to take some time and do some additional research on it. I think that Hilton Head is a place where we expect us to use whatever means to be sensitive to our environment and personally not going out to buy an e-vehicle. I would like to know the comparisons on cost and how this would benefit and set the standard that we as a town are sensitive to. So I am going to take all your great information here and look a little bit further into it, and I hope we get to have a conversation later about it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Glenn?
Yes. You have a nice number, 4,700 for the first 2 weeks of service this spring, which is an impressive number. I wonder if that can be broken down at all in terms of how many are going to the beach versus how many are going to other destinations in town.
We do have the ability to pull that data out, and I have to say that it's been a big push over there with the trolley starting up. I have some personnel changeovers, and typically we have this data ready, and it was not ready today, and so.
That's fine.
But yes, we have the ability to do stop by stop where people get on, and we have passenger counters that can do that on the buses, and we gave you the information for the year last year. We can do it on intervals
I
again.
think periodically that would be useful data for us to have. The other question I've got for you in the same vein is, are people using the shuttle to park at USCB and go down to Coligny? Is that a routine?
I know once we run that beach shuttle, and we haven't started yet, because last year in April, we didn't really carry anybody. So they asked me for the data, and so we haven't started yet, because I guess we're not at that point. But once the beach shuttle starts running, the trolleys also watch that USCB parking lot, and the answer is
Right.
yes. They carry several hundred people, on a Saturday and a Sunday, and a Monday if it's a holiday, from USCB to Coligny.
In connection with that, it would be useful to know if we're receiving any comments from those passengers. You've heard me before concern about whether there's enough room on the trolley for all of the stuff that people want to take to the beach. And so I'd like to know if you're hearing about that one way or the other as it's moving forward. I'm very pleased with the success of the shuttle. I applaud you for your service. I'm proud of the town for partnering with you. Thank you.
Thank you. I would say the only comment I've gotten so far, no one has made any comments that they were not allowed to bring any of their things. The issue we have now is pets. People want to bring their dogs on the bus, and we allow a pet in a carrier, and that's our rule, because we don't want that trolley overrun with big wet dogs. And I love dogs, but if they're in a carrier, they have those little soft carriers, they can bring their pet that they brought on vacation in their carrier. And so that's probably the biggest concern I've heard this year.
Thank you, Glenn. Good to see you again, Mary Lou. I think I look at our conversation regarding innovation from a brand standpoint, and you're well aware of that emphasis. So I look at vehicles that suggest a different scale than the trolleys that we're using. I look at the vehicles from a fund standpoint. I look at the vehicles from perhaps an environmental standpoint, i.e., does electric suggest something about the island that diesel doesn't, so on. So having said that, I recognize that these vehicles that you have up on the screen probably aren't the appropriate ones to be driving up and down 278. So it begs the question, if you were to analyze our ability to use a vehicle like this, how would you go about establishing a route and then deciding what vehicle and what budget might be needed to make it a successful venture?
Well, and I was going to talk about the airport service too, because that's something new that we're coming through. And so if something is pretty comprehensive and fairly large and needs a lot of public input, I look for consultants to help me with that, because that's real important, especially on Hilton Head, that everybody's afforded an opportunity to give their opinion on where they want a bus to go or where they want a route to go. So if it was a big project, like I believe the airport is, I would get a consultant to do it. If you just asked me to provide transportation between USCB and Coligny, then I would go about it a different way, looking at what the demand is and what's the mission? Are they trying to bring their beach stuff? Are they just parking there and heading into Coligny area? So I guess the approach would be whatever really fits what we're trying to do. I know with the trolley coming in and doing those routes, I worked with your town staff, which was amazing. And every year we've altered that route. And so with this year's alterations going up into where the sandbox is and in Low Country Park, that didn't exist when we started, and so it didn't really make sense. And so I believe that if aren't open to making these changes and looking every year at, what are people requesting, what's a good area, what would work out, then you're pretty stagnant. And so that I commit to, that every year we look at, what's going on, what does the town looking for, and then what can we do with our existing resources.
Yeah, my objective here would be to provide a service in areas that are more concentrated, i.e. the Pope Avenue, Palmetto Bay Road corridor, where people might be less inclined to get in an automobile as a goal. So the question that it comes to mind is, how do we analyze the possibility of trying to achieve that goal? And I look to Ann and Missy and the staff, and just wonder whether or not that's something staff is going to be doing, or whether Palmetto Breeze would be doing that. But my personal objective would be to make it more convenient for people to move up and down the corridor without getting in an automobile, and to have it be an experience that it benefits the community brand. So I think that we recognize, I think we can recognize that there are timeshare vehicles going up and down the road that provide a level of service, but are they the kind of message that we in this community want to be reinforcing? So I think that Palmetto Breeze is doing a admirable job moving people up and down the 278 corridor. I'd be very interested in knowing whether or not people are using the trolley to avoid getting in a car in the more congested area of Pope Avenue and so on. So that's a little bit following up on what Glenn said.
Alex may have a question.
Oh, yeah, good. Alex, Glenn reminds me that you're there. Do you have something you want to add? Have we lost Alex?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, now we can, Alex, thanks.
Okay, all right, thank you, sir, I appreciate it, and Mary Lou, thank you for joining us again. I agree with all comments that have been made thus far from my colleagues. I would just challenge us with our partnership with Palmetto Breeze. We all know that parking, for example, is a premium on Hilton Head. And the more that we can do to change the culture of folks driving from one place to another is so important to us long-term on Hilton Head. We're not going to be able to build enough parking to deal with any type of increase of capacity. Not that we're looking for increases, but we know that they're happening naturally. I know that there are a lot of grants available, Mary Lou, you've alluded to them, but I would not box ourselves in as to the possibilities based on grant availability. I think transportation on our island is something that's very important, has to be incorporated into our long-term planning, into our budgeting process as well. So Mary Lou, I'd ask that you be more aggressive in your conversations with staff and start to bring back not only more data, as Councilman Stanford is suggesting, but also more conceptual plans with numbers attached to them so that we can start making some decisions as far as direction is concerned. Those are my comments, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mary Lou, just one other comment I'd make. In my mind, we, as Mr. Brown suggested, we need to open up parking lots that are available for the beach. And there are over 300 parking places down at Crossings Park. That would be a logical place for a smaller vehicle to move up and down Pope Avenue and Palmetto Bay, collecting people at different parking lots that might be available to them, USCB and so on. So I think there is a different scale of operation that's suggested here, and that's what I think we should be looking into.
I have two additional questions. Mary Lou, in terms of the data that Glenn mentioned, is it possible to also look at if anyone is using the trolley as transportation to get from their residence to work?
Other than just having a surveyor on the bus asking people in anecdotal responses, I don't know how we would get that data, but we could poll the drivers and see what they know. They get to know, they have the same route every week. They get to know who's riding, and the people that use it to go to work will be going every day, and they'll know the driver. And so I can find out that way.
Good.
And the other thing would be to put somebody on to survey people.
Right, that would be great. Thank you.
If we could have the statistics that Glenn was referencing, ridership and so on, and stops on a monthly basis,
Yes.
that would be helpful. Thank
That's
you.
not a problem.
Thank you very much. I
The
appreciate
other
it.
thing I just have to show you, because I'm here, where we're at with this airport service, it's in the study phase, and we originally were supposed to get the vehicles at the end of February. I don't know if anybody's been buying vehicles lately, but it's a real crapshoot when you get them. So they did leave the factory last week. 2 of the 3 left to head to Columbia, where they're going to upfit them with some of our cameras and different things. So we're thinking we will have 2 buses before Memorial Day ready to roll. So that's really good news, and I conveyed that to the consultant, because basically I told him, there's no need to put this on a super rush because we don't have vehicles. So I just want to show you just a teaser here, because it's not, all the data's not out, and I can put this on here. And this just says, what will the service look like? And I really like what they've come up with so far, and what they're doing, what they're proposing that we should do is there's 2 loop routes from the airport going around the north way and around the south way. So if you're, because a loop route is very problematic if there's only one, because if you live 3/4 of the way around, you've got a long ride to get home, whereas if they go both ways, unless you're halfway out, you have a quick way back and forth. And so I know this is really small. I didn't really want to get down to the road details, but this is after all of the public input and the and what they've come up with so far. The northernmost piece is around the airport. You can kind of see the runways, but it's using the Cross Island to complete the loop. And what made me, when you said, hey, we should be doing something on Palmetto Bay Road, this bus could do that, because it's not just for the airport, it's for transportation around the island. And I really like this concept, and I think that short of going through a lot of gates and things, we're serving a lot of people here and a lot of homes and villas, and I just think this is one piece of our transportation puzzle. And when this is in a final form, it will come back for everybody to comment on, and you guys are all stakeholders. There'll be a meeting for everybody to comment and look at it. But I just had to put that out there after you made that comment as well about Palmetto Bay Road and the crossings. This could very well serve that.
Thank you, Mary Lou. Anything else? Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. It's exciting to see what we've done in, this is our 5th year, and it's really
Yeah.
coming along.
Good progress. Thank you. Second item on new business, consideration of proposed ordinance 2022-08, amending sections 12.1.10 and 12.1.511 of the Municipal Code of the Town of Hilton Head Island, South Carolina, with regard to e-bike regulations. And Missy, you have a presentation for our benefit? Missy, I appreciate your jumping in and taking on this project.
Well, thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Missy Lewick, Principal Planner for the record, and we are going to be discussing electrical bicycles or e-bikes. Yes, I did jump into this a little bit midstream, but I'm happy to do so. This is a little bit of the overview that will be included in the presentation today, a little bit of summary of where we've been, project history, some communication efforts, public feedback, as well as the draft ordinance. So e-bike use is growing quickly, and this technology provides many positive attributes in allowing older individuals, individuals with disabilities, commuting workers, and people who may be new to biking the ability to ride a bicycle and to enjoy the town's recreational pathways. The usage of this equipment has led to increased demand on our infrastructure and presented the need to discuss possible regulations and/or policy guidelines to protect the safety of all users on our pathways. So that's why we're here. And you all probably know this history better than I do, but this topic has been discussed several times before the Public Planning Committee. It started back in June of 2021. Then the then town attorney provided some legal overview about e-bike definitions and regulations. Then in August of 21, it came back to PPC again, and the aftermath of that was to hold a series of stakeholder meetings that were held between August and November of 21 with various stakeholders that are listed here. And then in January of this year, and this is where I kind of joined the discussion, the topic was before PPC again, and staff was tasked with drafting the ordinance for consideration, as well as communicating with area bike shops and conducting a survey to get communication and input from them on the proposed concepts that were up for discussion. Those responses are included in the packet materials today, as well as the draft ordinance. So since the last meeting, we did create an email distribution list to those bike shops, and I've communicated with them several times. We did send the written survey to those bike shops. There were 37 letters that were issued, and we received 4 written responses that was in the packet. And then we also worked with Bike Walk Hilton Head Island on the safety and etiquette guidelines that are also included in the packet materials. So 2 of the main areas of public comment that were heard based on the feedback we received was that there was general support for the safety and etiquette materials and those guidelines. There was some concern that was expressed by some of those who responded that it puts the burden on the bike shops and the private sector, but otherwise it seemed like there was overall support for that education from them to be able to do to help us with the safety and etiquette component. The other main comment that we heard was related to the requirement of limiting the speed on an e-bike or a governor. We did have some mixed comments on that, and there were some who did express some concerns regarding this recommendation. Some believe the speed limit is too high. Some felt like it was a good, we looked at it and thought that it was a good compromise figure. Some thought the restriction was not necessary and does place an undue burden on the business to make alterations to the bicycles than what is delivered from the factory, and that it may cause problems with their warranty on those items. And then in the packet, there was a draft ordinance, and there was an amended version of that was handed out this morning that corrected 3 typos that were pointed out. Thank you for that. And there are really 4 key points that are part of the ordinance. That is to amend the town code to define that certain types of lower speed e-bikes are permitted on our pathways, to require the distribution of the town bike safety etiquette materials with each transaction. And again, those materials are included in the packet and was this document. Third, to require the use of a governor that would limit the speed to no greater than 12 miles per hour on an e-bike, and then to establish an enforcement mechanism. There are several things that we're going to continue to look at that aren't in the current proposal, but we're going to look at discussing additional pathway signage and etiquette and other safety practices, especially in critical areas, focal points, or congested areas that are on our town pathways. Also looking at the Pope Avenue streetscape project that's coming up in the CIP to examine transportation-related issues in this area. The items of study could include increasing the pathway widths, adding on-street bike lanes, multi-purpose travel lanes, uniform striping and signage, and other technology to improve safety and congestion improvements, et cetera. We would like to explore further partnering with bike ambassador programs to enhance more of the education and promote safe behavior on the pathways for all users. And that we would recommend that we continue looking at all of these items and monitor the pathway safety programs for potential additional enhancements. And finally, in a lot of the comments that we received, there was some discussion about other equipment, not just related to e-bicycles. And currently, motorized vehicles are prohibited on our pathways, but we will continue to look at other equipment and evaluate that if that need arises. So ultimately, staff is requesting that the committee recommend approval of the ordinance to town council. And I can take any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Alex, are you on board? Want to ask a question? Make a comment?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Missy, for your presentation. I'm prepared to move forward with this proposal to full town council. As far as the e-bikes are concerned, I did want to make a comment on some of the additional items that Missy mentioned. We definitely need to improve our infrastructure when it comes to our pathways. The part that I'm concerned about is, I guess, this idea of leaning on the ambassadors when it comes to the experience on our bike paths. It leans more towards that limited service government attitude. We've got pathways just about everywhere on the island. We've done a great job with doing that, but now we're at a critical point where they need to be enhanced. Making them wider, absolutely, but we've got line of sight issues. If we're going to enforce speed limits and that sort of things, we need to monitor that, in my opinion, in-house. So leaning more towards public safety within our pathways and how the pathway user engages with the roadway user is our responsibility. So whatever needs to be done to enhance that, I think is important as we move forward. Those are my comments, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Glenn?
Thank you. Missy, good report. I appreciate the efforts of the town staff to develop this issue, and it always makes it easier when you have to make decisions to have them clearly presented, and you've done that. One additional item for communication that I don't think you mentioned is that we need to engage the villa rental companies, the marketing companies, the timeshare providers, et cetera, come up with a brochure, come up with some sort of statement that they can use to in turn circulate to tenants and others who would be coming to the island bringing their own e-bikes, because we know that's coming. Then, as a matter of comment and explanation here, I feel trapped in this, having to make this decision. The trap is that we have a state law that says that e-bikes are bicycles. So the only way we could truly ban e-bikes would be to ban bicycles from the pathways. And that's just not a viable conclusion for us to reach. We have tried to come up with reasonable restrictions on the use of these bicycles speed, et cetera, trying to engage the bicycle rental companies in how they provide these services. And it's going to be an ongoing process, like so many things that we have here. I've heard from many well-meaning, carefully thought out comments from many citizens here on the island who are very concerned about the safety aspects of that. We understand it, but we just simply cannot ban bicycles from the paths. So I intend to support moving this forward to the full council as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Tammy? Have at it.
Thanks. So thank you, Missy. And thank you to everyone who has sent their comments directly, I think, to all of us. I know that each of us have read them carefully and considered all of those comments carefully. I do have, my own questions and concerns. First of all, a regulation for the purpose of just having something on the books, to me, never makes sense. And so, having said that, I don't know if this ordinance really accomplishes very much. I do like the fact that we are educating people, and I would, as Glenn mentioned, as part of our permitting and the information that the town is asking short-term rentals to include in their villas, that this is a required piece of information. We know that people are bringing their bicycles, and now they're bringing their e-bicycles with them. I don't know what that means, other than the educational piece to those who bring their bicycles in terms of regulating their speeds with any type of control features. Unlikely to happen, right? Those of us who live on the island who own e-bicycles, we aren't held by, I don't know how many of those will reach and how many will regulate their bicycles. It doesn't speak to the beach, which we know increasing numbers of people using our beaches means less room for people to ride their bicycles, etc. Historically, we used to have all sorts of wonderful opportunities on our beach with the sand cruisers and the sunfish boats that were able to be rented and utilized. And now with more and more people taking up more and more space, we don't have those. And I don't see how e-bicycles and their speed is being addressed through this ordinance. So a missing piece there for me. In terms of safety, obviously, everything that we can do to provide a safe environment on the island, we are all in on. It's first responsibility of being up here is to make sure that we have safety. But if that means e-bikes in large numbers on our pathways that are already populated with bicycles and people walking and children and dogs and trains, literally trains of bicycles with connecting pieces down the back of them. I'm not sure that signage, more signage, isn't anything more than a distraction. The stop signs that we currently have are rarely noticed or paid attention to with an actual stop. So those are all concerns that I have. The idea that we would widen and stripe our roadways and pathways anymore goes counter to my belief that I'm trying to hold back on any further urbanization of our small paradise island here that includes our natural environment that we look to retain. So lots of problems for me in this ordinance. And I think right now that's where I have to stop, because I don't know if having an ordinance for the sake of having an ordinance that doesn't fulfill any number of the things that I've brought up, it makes a lot of sense for me. could attend to everything in a meaningful and thoughtful way and actually accomplish something, then I'd be all in. But not sure we're there. Thanks.
Thank you. Missy, good job. I'm going to support the staff proposal and move it on, from my standpoint, move it on to full council. We have to recognize that our pathways are a lot like our roads. There's limited capacity at this point. Any decision that we as a council make to bring more people onto the island is going to exacerbate those issues. Increased tourism is going to complicate those issues. But we are where we are in terms of the width of our pathways. So it really depends to a large degree on what the people who are on our pathways feel is their responsibility and the town's expectations. So the two things that we are including in this ordinance that I think are significant is we are regulating speed, and there is an expectation of etiquette because of the communication that is provided within the ordinance. I also think that without the ordinance, we really are a little bit like the Wild West. And the ordinance does begin to bracket standards for rental companies that I think are important and appropriate. The bottom line, though, is the state law that we have been given and have to abide by, and that says that we do not have, this council does not have the ability to prohibit e-bikes without prohibiting bikes. So our option that is left is to regulate in some way reasonable expectations and reasonable speed, and I think this ordinance has done that. Thank you. We will allow public comment, but it's appropriate to have a motion on the floor before we do that. So is there a motion to move this forward to Town Council?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I would move that the Public Planning Committee recommend forward to the full Town Council adoption of the draft ordinance that's before us today.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right, public comment. Yes, Ms. Alfred.
Steve Alfred on behalf of the Bike Walk Hilton Head Island. Frank Babel would have been here today, but for the unfortunate loss of his wife on Monday. First, I want to congratulate Missy for doing an excellent job of putting together a proposal following having to step in on Diane's departure. The objective here is safety primarily, and that boils down simply to speed. Etiquette would be nice. This, to my understanding, is the first part of what could be a two-phase approach to the problem. This ordinance deals only with bikes that come through the rental companies. It doesn't deal with e-bikes that come from other sources. So it's only going to hit a portion of the e-bike riding population. In phase two, which I hope there will be, I think we've got to deal with a broader audience. Let me say one technical point that I think is a problem, or could be a problem in the ordinance as presented, is that it proposes to limit through the governor on the electric motor the speed to 12 miles per hour. My personal view is that that's not really the way to go. The governors have to be set for class type 1 and type 2 at 20 miles an hour. They can be set by the bike shops at any speed they want. They can make them 35, they can make them 15. My understanding is that the bike shops would like to have a limit that is actually less than 20. That's up to them. But these bikes can be used elsewhere. They can be used on the main streets, they can be used off island, they can be used, if they're owned, they can be taken back at home. So that limiting the speed of a bike to any particular number by the governor seems to me should be up to the bike shops, not in the ordinance. Our objective here is to obtain a speed limit of, say, 12. Pope Avenue speed limits maybe should be lower than that. Elsewhere, 12 seems fine. But I think we have to limit that in another way than by going after the governor that the bike shops can adjust. With a lot of experience in Sea Pines on the same issue, we have found basically that pamphlets and other written advice handed out through the bike shops, handed out through rental agencies and other sources, A, are not read, or B, are not remembered when they get on the bike paths. So my view essentially is if you want to obtain a particular type of behavior by cyclists on the bike paths, you have to tell them the message where they are. That means on the bike paths, and that means signs. So I hope that we get to that in phase 2 of dealing with that particular aspect of it. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Hoffman. Other comments? Yeah, Patsy. Uh-oh. What'd you do, Patsy? Too much exercise?
Right, that's right, yes. Patsy Bryson, 3060 Alien Avenue. I'll disclose for the record, I did not fall off a bicycle, and I was not run over by a bicycle, but I have a broken ankle. But I do stand here with several hats on. I'm co-founder of the Coalition of Island Neighbors. We've sent a memo to the committee in opposition to this ordinance, but in favor of safety regulations. Also, I'm a member of the Bike Walk Hilton Head Island Board. There is a division of opinion on that board as to whether or not this is the appropriate ordinance to adopt, including a division of opinion with regard to the staff's interpretation of the state law. I would respectfully request that they revisit that opinion, which is handicapping you at this point, because particularly pointing out the SEDOT design manual was revised in February of 2021 to define a shared use pathway, which is what we have, as not allowing motorized vehicles. So it allows non-motorized vehicles. So I'd respectfully request that based upon the information that I have personally provided to the committee and to the town staff, they revisit that opinion, which dates back. And also it's important, as we all know, to ask the proper question to the General Counsel of the Municipal Association to make sure that the response comports with what the town really desires. So I hope that can be revisited. And thank you very much to Councilmember Becker for raising the issue about the beaches. My husband and I do bike a lot, and we bike on the beach as well as on the pathways, sometimes on the road. But we do not bike at high tide on the beach. There's just not room, even during the off-season. And I don't think we even have an off-season these days. My other hats are as an active participant in Pedal Hilton Head Island until this year. I've even been a bike leader. And also, along with my colleague and friend John Witherspoon, am a bike ambassador, but not right now. So I have a lot of experience with the pathways. I've provided evidence to this committee of the challenges of the bike paths with e-bikes on them. There's been no evidence that I've seen that the committee has received to the contrary. I share Council Member Becker's concern about widening pathways in certain places because I too believe in maintaining the beauty of this island. But the fact is, our multi-use pathways are not safe for e-bikes. And for you to push forward with this ordinance without addressing that and without requesting that it be reviewed by your attorney again in light of some changes in the law, I think is a mistake. And on behalf of all those hats I wear, I respectfully urge you to not move this forward, to send it back to staff for more review, but to adopt the safety regulations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patsy. Mr. Bullard?
Hello, Jason Bullock. I own multiple bike brands on the island. Oddly, I agree with both of them on different sides of the issue. I agree with Ms. Bryson that I think that the legal interpretation of the code is completely incorrect. It doesn't deal with multi-use pathways. It deals with pathways specifically set aside for bikes. If the committee and the town are going to jump past that, I agree with the earlier speaker, forcing us to modify something that has been certified by the Consumer Product Safety Commission is wrong. Making us modify something that is built to a specification is not something that you should make us do. Forcing us to make an item go 12 miles an hour modifies and voids the warranties and puts us in violation of it. And I find it odd, based upon the two of the larger bike renters on the island, Mr. Hall and myself, writing to the committee and expressing our displeasure with the idea of forcing us to do a speed limit. Speed limits are absolutely correct. Speed limits are absolutely nice, but you're not forcing Hertz or Avis to modify cars to only go 45 miles an hour, the maximum speed on the island. To force us to modify something built to a specification is wrong. So with that, I hope at least you reconsider the forcing of the 12 miles an hour. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Polk. Mr. Witherspoon?
John Witherspoon, Chairman of the Bike Ambassador Program. I didn't plan on talking today, but I just wanted to underline what Patsy said. These are fantastic flyers that were designed and produced by Taylor Ladd of the town staff. We love them. But our bike ambassadors have only a few seconds to interact with people on vacation, answering questions, passing out maps. So flyers in the past have not been a very efficient way to get the message across. More, as Steve said, personal information. However, having said that, another committee member and I will be taking these out with us on patrol, just as a test run, see if, we can get their attention for a few minutes. But that's the best we can say at this point. But this is fantastic, and we really appreciate the effort that went into it. We're going to train 17 more bikers early next month, all highly motivated. We've got to get our ambassador crew expanded to meet the demand that you see every day when you're driving around the aisle. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Witherspoon. Any other public comments in response to this proposal? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the dais. Other comments from us up here?
Sure.
Why did I ask?
Why did you ask? Well, following up on some of the comments that were presented, I'd like to ask Curtis where the legal opinion in his mind sits, and whether or not Hilton Head has any room to create a situation where we make our own decisions on what's best on our island. And I don't mean to put you on the spot. If this is something that you'd prefer to answer after, that's fine too.
I would prefer to answer that later.
Okay, no problem. So I'll wait for that. And then secondly, on the bicycles themselves, is there an odometer? Is there something that indicates what speed you're riding at? There is, on all of them. That comes as a piece of equipment. Okay. All right, those were two questions that I had. Thank you. Pardon me? In what? Oh, so it doesn't indicate the speed that you're riding at? About 50-50. So that's not the same on all bikes?
Excuse me, Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman.
I
I'd like to remind
just want to
citizens
comment
to
to
step
Mr.
up.
Witherspoon and to the other bike ambassadors how much we appreciate your volunteer service, promoting safety, promoting the good things about this island. Thank you for your efforts in that regard.
There's a motion before the Public Planning Committee If there are no other comments from the committee, Krista, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Brown?
Support.
Mrs. Becker?
No.
Mr. Stanford?
Yes.
Mr. Ames?
Yes.
Motion carries, sir.
Thank you very much. That concludes the items on the agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and thank you, Alex. Aye.